Hey there, and welcome to my first Unity tutorial here on YouTube, which is called Introduction to Unity / Angry Cows. So what we're gonna do today is set up a little game scene in Unity, especially for those of you guys who haven't used Unity at all by now, so that you get a rough understanding of how to set up a game scene in 3D, how to add some UI and some scripting to it to get a little bit of game logic into the game. So maybe first of all I will show you guys how this scene will look like in the end. So we'll have a little wall here filled with bricks, a little physics engine interaction. So as you can see, if you shoot out your bullets, they will be counted on top left in your UI. And then you can try to hit the bricks to destroy the wall, and then as soon as the cows are falling to the ground and hitting the ground, the whole scene gets restarted, and then you can start back again from scratch. And yeah, these are more or less the base game logics Angry Bird used as well. So let's get started. So I will close this project here first. And yeah, if you want to install Unity, you can do that on unity3d.com. And I would recommend to download the Unity Hub, because the Unity Hub is basically a software which runs on your PC or Mac system. And I can quickly open it for you guys. And it manages the installs on your machine. So as you can see, I've already installed Unity 2020 and Unity 2019. And for you guys, if you open it for the first time, nothing will show up here. So what you can do is add a new version and then select whatever you want to install. I would recommend to use the recommended release or the official release, so 2020 or 2019. For this tutorial, it doesn't matter. Both will work fine. At the beginning or during the Unity Hub install process, you should also connect your Unity account to it. As you can see, this is especially later on for using the Unity Asset Store to download packages, modules, whatever there, and to also manage your Unity licenses. Okay, so as soon as you've downloaded everything, we can go to projects, and usually this list is of course empty at the beginning. As you can see, I have a lot of little test projects here, but if you want to add a new one, click here on new. Then select first a template. What does Unity templates mean? These are predefined templates you can use. So for example, if you want to set up a 2D game environment, you should select the 2D template, otherwise the 3D template. And there are some more advanced templates as well, where you have a high definition render pipeline. So that means that there's already a post-processing volume in there, nice shading effects, nice light settings, and so on. But for now, for our basic tutorial, 3D is fine. Okay, so give it a name. Let's call it Angry Cows Physics Game. And then select a location for it on your hard drive. Make sure that there are no special characters in there, like dots or hashtags, whatever, because then, especially on Mac, sometimes Unity has problems finding the location. So yeah, just make sure that there are no dots in there. Then let's click on Create. Okay, so this is how Unity 2019 looks like. If you are working with Unity 2020, we have a dark mode as well, which looks a little bit nicer. Or if you are working with the Unity Pro license, the dark mode is already supported in 2019. Anyway, basically how Unity works is here on the left side we have a hierarchy panel where you can see what kind of modules are inside of your scene. By now only a camera and a directional light. Here in the middle part we have the scene view where you can check out and edit stuff in your scene. For example, I can now move around the camera here or later on change 3D objects. We have a game mode, so this is basically the mode the camera the camera sees and how the game will run in the end. Asset store package manager I will explain later on, and on the right side here there's the inspector, and the inspector shows for example, if you select here a direction light on the main camera or a 3D object, whatever, what kind of attributes this object has. So the position, rotation, scaling, and in our case for the camera also like field of view and so on. So there's not a lot going on by now, so what we would first do is create something new, and this works by right-clicking into the hierarchy, create a 3D object, and then let's create a plane first. As the plane will be our floor later on, maybe rename it to floor at the beginning. And then as you can see in our game mode, the floor still sits more or less in the middle of the scene, so what we can do is maybe push it a little bit down. First of all, set it to 0, 0, 0, that it sits in the middle of our scene. And then, yeah, let's move it a little bit further down, maybe -2. And yeah, then it looks pretty nice. And maybe let's scale it up a little bit to 2, 2, 2. That we have a little bit more space inside of our scene. Okay, what we can do now is check out what's beneath here. So on the left side we have our project folders. So basically our assets folder contains everything we need in our scene. So for example, if you want to add new materials, new models, new images, whatever, you should always save it under assets, and that's what we're gonna do now. So we want to create a material, and that's why we add a new folder called materials. And now we can right click, create a new material. Let's call it grass material. And then it's basically the same like in Blender or Cinema 4D. You have here in your inspector panel different attributes you can play around with. So for example, changing the base color of our material here, that looks a little bit more like grass. Then you have multiple ways of how to attach this material to our plane. You can either drag and drop it directly into our scene view, or you can drag and drop it here onto our object. Floor, not 4. Okay, cool. So let's check again how it looks in the game mode. And what you should always do, as you can see, there's this little star here behind your scene name. You should always save your scene after if you've done a couple of changes. You can do that like in all other programs with the Control S. And what we want to do straight from the beginning is, because right now, if you click on Asset Scenes, this is still called a sample scene. We want to do our own scene, so save as scenes, and then let's call it Angry Cow scene. So nice. What are we gonna do next? We want to add some physics into our scene, and to do that and see how it works, we want to add a new 3D object which is called sphere. And if we set the position to 0, 0, 0 in our game mode and also in our scene mode, we will see this floating sphere here. If you hit play, our project will run, And as you can see, nothing happens because this is just a sphere and it has a position, but there are no physical laws attached by now. And you can do that because Unity has a physics engine running in the background anyway. But how it works is that for your sphere you have to add a component, which you can do here. You can add scripts later on there as well. And then you can search for rigid body. And that's exactly what we need to give it a physical behavior. So as you can see, rigid body, you can give it a mass. So if it's a more heavier object like metal or something, you can even increase this variable here to 4. But by now we just stick with 1. And then if we hit save it and hit play, this little sphere falls to the ground and stays there. Why does it stay there? Because usually if you add 3D objects in Unity, they already have a mesh collider or a sphere collider, so they can collide with each other and recognize each other. And so as soon as they have a rigid body as well, yeah, they can fall down to the ground, but then stay at the floor. Maybe let's go back into asset materials and add a nice material for this sphere as well. As the sphere will be later on our bullet, let's call it bullet material. And now maybe let's make it grayish and add a little metallic to it, a little bit of smoothness, and then attach this material to our bullet. As you can see, now it's kind of nice and shiny, so it looks more like metal. So again, the scene. So, what are we gonna do next? As you already saw in the basic example at the beginning, that we want to have something like a nice wall made out of bricks. So what we want to do is right click, 3D object, create a cube, set it again to 0, 0, 0, that it sits in front of our scene. And maybe to just make it look a little bit nicer, maybe add another cube. We can call it brick top and brick bottom. The other one is brick bottom. A nice feature, for example, like now, or even if you zoomed super far away out of the scene, or you're somehow kind of lost, you can always click in the hierarchy, double click onto the model, and then it zooms in automatically, which is kind of a nice feature. So we have this brick bottom, brick top, and the top one we want to move up, and maybe we want to scale it. And now this is pretty important. You can all do this by hand, as you just saw. So on the top left, there's the move tool. So inside of our scene view, you can move stuff around with the gizmos here. You can rotate stuff. And of course, you can scale it as well. So we want to scale it down a little bit. And what you can do, or what you always can do is, without using the tools here, you can also just use the inspector and then type in your numbers here for the scaling and so on. So let's put that on top, 0.6, the scaling of 0.2. And now let's give it also a nice material, grass material. Maybe add another material here, because now we know how to do it. Let's call it brick material. And maybe give it a nice brownish color. Brownish red, like a brick. And add it to our bottom part. This is how it looks like in our game view. Now what we should do, because we want to achieve that this is one object, because right now these are two objects. So what you can always do in Unity is create an empty. Let's call it brick. And then you can drag and drop these two inside of this object. And then, as you can see, if you click on the top hierarchy of this brick, this is one object, you can move it around, and the other ones will still stick inside of this object. Okay, nice. So now we want to do something which is called converting your object into a prefab. First of all, to do that, because maybe we have a lot of prefabs later on in our game scene, in our assets folder, again create a folder which is called prefabs. Oops. Double click on it, and now you can just drag and drop one of your instances here. We want to drag and drop the brick into our prefabs folder. And what is a prefab? A prefab is basically an object we just created. So for example, like in our case, this brick with the top and the bottom part. And now it's an object inside of our assets folder, or our asset structure. And the nice thing, what we can do with it now, if we remove the brick from our scene, that we can just drag and drop these prefabs out of our assets folder into our scene. So as you can see, they get duplicated. As you can see, prefabs are always colored in this blue color, and if you click here and open prefab, or click on open prefab, or if you double click on the prefab here, you can change whatever we've done before. So now what we want to do maybe is put this top part of our brick, or push it a little bit more up. And now if you save it or go back into our scene, you can see that all the instances inside of our scene have changed. And this is a pretty powerful tool, because now you only have one instance you've created once, and no matter when you want to change something, like change the color or the material or the texture, it changes for all the instances you have in your scene. And that's pretty powerful, because maybe you can imagine if you are building a big game environment, there are tons of assets in there. And so if you want to change the color of one object, which is, I don't know, 2,000 times cloned in your scene, then you only have to do it once, and it gets applied to all of them. Okay, this was just an example how to drag and drop them in there. So now let's do it for real. First of all, let's set this back. 0.6. And now maybe move this brick down here. So, and now with Control D, you can just duplicate these bricks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe use 8 of them. Because, yeah, we want to build our little wall out of it. So, let's see. We have these ones. Maybe let's add and create empty to group them all into our wall, like we did before. And maybe create another empty, which is called row 1. Put them into row 1. And that makes our life a little bit easier. Put it into the wall, because now we can copy and paste the whole row without any issues. Let's see how it looks like if we zoom a little bit more in. So we can move this row a little bit down, maybe remove the last brick, and stack them nice on top of each other. Cool, let's maybe call this row 2. Then there's also a row 3. You're totally free to do whatever you want here, so it doesn't have to look exactly like what I did here. Feel free to add your own stuff. Nice. So maybe let's move this whole wall, this container, a little bit more to the back of our scene. And you can always check out by clicking on play how it looks like. Okay, looks pretty good. Or of course if you click on the game mode. Maybe move it a little bit more to the right. It's not in the center right now. Okay, something like this. So one thing, because right now, as you can see, the bullet falls to the ground. So as you may remember, we added a rigid body to the bullet so that physics get attached. So if we want to later on shoot it onto our wall and the bricks should behave in a physical behavior, we should add also to brick top and bottom. So maybe this was a little bit fast. Go to assets prefabs again, double click on our brick, and then attach. You can select both of them to our brick top and brick bottom, a rigid body. Save your scene, click play. And as you can see, some of them are already falling apart because the physics engine does move them around a little bit because they are not nicely aligned to each other, or not nicely stacked on each other. But yeah, you shouldn't worry about that by now. Okay, so what are we going to do next? First of all, maybe rename our sphere into bullet, because we want to use this one later on. Maybe scale it down a little bit to 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. And then let's make it a prefab as well, like drag and drop it into assets prefabs. And as you can see, it turns blue. It's now a prefab as well. And then we can remove it from our hierarchy or from our stage by either clicking right and then delete, or just hit delete on your keyboard. Works as well. Okay. So now we need the cannon or the slingshot. So what we'll do is create an empty. Let's call it cannon. And then inside of this cannon, right click, add a cylinder. And this one we maybe can call tube. So it's the cannon tube. And maybe scale this one a little bit down to 0.5 and set 0.5 as well. Then as you can see, it's a little bit more stretched. And it's pretty important that when you're adding the tube inside of our cannon container, that the position is 0, 0, 0 and the rotation as well. Because we want to move it later on with our script, and if there's already a rotation or position attached, that might conflict with our script. So now let's move the cannon a little bit around. Maybe first of all set it to 0, 0, 0, and then move it more into our game view and rotate it on the x-axis around 90 degrees. You can play around here, it doesn't have to be exactly like I'm doing it. So let's save it again. And what we can do is maybe we can attach a nice material with the bullet material to our pipe. And this is how it looks like in our game mode right now. Okay. So one last thing in this first part of my tutorial is how can we use the asset store. To explain the asset store a little bit, it's more or less like the App Store but for Unity. So you can download nice packages, and these packages you can use inside of your scenes. So for example, if you want to build a game, you can already download nice car models there, or even cars which already have driving physics attached. And maybe let's check out how the asset store looks like. Takes a while to load. Yeah, this is how it looks like. And as you can see, yeah, there are a lot of assets. You can search for different 3D models, libraries you can use to tween stuff, and so on and so on. We want to start with something simple, and we want to search for Fantasy Skybox. If you play around here with the pricing values, if you put them to 0 and 0, then you will find all the assets which are free to purchase. I already downloaded Fantasy Skybox here, that's why it's grayed out, but you guys should click on it. And then for me there's just an import button here, but you guys need to download it first. So this button will say download. Click on it. As soon as it's downloaded, click on import like I'm doing here. Takes a little bit. And then you can see what kind of stuff comes with this package. So as you can see here, there are a lot of materials and PNG textures. And yeah, by now we can just import everything, but later on, if you just, I don't know, want to have one special material or something, you can also deselect everything and then just select the materials you want to use. So this takes a little bit because there are a lot of PNGs in there which are quite big. First of all, what are we gonna do now? We wanna add a nice skybox around our scene. Skybox is basically, to say it in easy words, more or less like a 360-degree image which sits around our scene. So in our standard scene, like we've seen already before, there's only like a blue sky and a horizon in there. But now we wanna change the skybox to be a little bit more, maybe cartoonish, so that there are some nice cartoon clouds in there, and that it looks a little bit more like a 3D game. So here we go. As you can see now in our assets folder, there's a new folder in there, Fantasy Skybox. So there you can find all the materials and stuff you need for importing it later on. Okay, let's go back into our scene mode, zoom a little bit out, and that's exactly the skybox I'm talking about. So as you can see, if you move a little bit around, this is a super basic skybox with a nice horizon and a blue sky, but yeah, it doesn't look as good as we want it to. So how can we add this skybox? Let's go to Window, Rendering, and then lighting settings. And then, as you can see, there's one tab scene and then environment. I think in Unity 2020 this tab might be on the second place, but here is on first place. And then in your skybox material, we can choose another material. And now we can just click through the new materials we just imported. As you can see, there's like a little preview down here. Which one do I like? Yeah, maybe this one. Close it, close it. Go back into the game view. As you can see, okay, we have this nice cartoony background. Okay, so save the scene. So we have all the assets we need inside of our scene. We have a nice wall. We have a cannon and a tube. What's missing? Missing by now are 3D objects. So what we can do now, as well as we know how the asset store works, is import some chickens, cows, whatever we want to use. So go back into the asset store and now search for farm animal set. And we will do the same as we did before. In my case, it's already downloaded, and now let's import it. Package is a little bit smaller than the one before, so this shouldn't take too long. Okay, and what we can do now is go into our farm animals package, go into prefabs, and then if you click on these, you can see here in the inspector there's already like a little preview of the 3D objects. You can even move them around. And so yeah, it's up to you what you want to use, but maybe you want to place a cow on top of our wall. As you can see, it's pretty big. So maybe let's scale it down to 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. Rotate it around 180 degrees. Oh, sorry, that was X. We need to rotate Y. And then, yeah, place it on top. Okay, cool. Now, if you hit play, what we've already learned, the cow is inside of our scene, but it's, as you can see, it's not moving, it's not behaving via physical correctness. So what we'll do here is add component and then add, first of all, a rigid body. And then, as you can see, the cow does not have a collider by now, so we need to add a rigid body to our cow and a collider. In our game, we can just use a box collider. And as you can see, now we have this cubish collider around our cow. There are mesh colliders as well, so that the collider has exactly the same model and behavior of the mesh. But for our game, it's fine if we are having a box collider, and it's a little bit easier for our computer to calculate. So let's check out if it works. Yeah, our cow sits on top here. Did move a little bit when the whole wall did move a bit, so they are connected. And now let's maybe add another one and another one and another one, and place them on the other cubes. Yeah, for the structure of our project, do the same like we did before, so that we have a nice container where we could put the cows in, call it maybe cows or something else, and move them all into this container. And as you can see now, we have a nice hierarchy here, so it's easy to find everything. In wall, we have our bricks inside of the rows, we have our cannon tube here, and then we have our cow objects here. Okay, this looks pretty good. Maybe I'll fix these quickly, that the whole wall doesn't get destroyed every time from the beginning on. Okay, let's see if that helps. Hit play. Okay, this looks way better. So that's it with our part, our first part in our tutorial. You can already, if you want, yeah, go a little bit more crazy with what we've done here by now. So you can maybe even add 2 more cows, move them over here, or add more bricks, whatever. And from time to time, always test in our play mode if everything looks fine and yeah, nothing is falling apart here. Yeah, and like I said, that's it for the first part. Now what we want to do in our second part is adding some scripts so that we can move around the cannon and that we can yeah, attach clones of our bullet into our scene, add velocity and force to them. And yeah, but that's something for the next session. Thank you for watching, and yeah, I hope you guys are gonna join the second part as well.